Some defense reporting says U.S. forces are increasing readiness in the region, but officials have not publicly confirmed any strike being on standby. As tensions between Washington and Tehran continue to escalate, attention has turned to Iran's air defense capabilities and whether they could complicate any potential American air campaign. Iranian state media says air defenses are on heightened readiness, but the exact posture cannot be independently confirmed. Military analysts continue to question whether Iran's network can reliably withstand a sustained U.S. air campaign. The gap between Iranian claims about defensive capabilities and Western assessments of those capabilities remains significant and difficult to bridge without actual combat data. Iranian state media describes a multi-layered system combining long, medium, and short-range air defense platforms into what Tehran characterizes as a comprehensive defensive web designed to protect the country's airspace. Whether this network functions as described, and whether it could effectively counter American stealth aircraft and precision munitions, cannot be independently verified from publicly available information. The following analysis draws on Iranian state media claims, Western defense reporting, and analyst assessments, each source with particular perspectives and limitations. Critical evaluation of all claims is essential for understanding what is known, what is claimed, and what remains genuinely uncertain. Iran's air defense approach is described as designed to deny hostile forces easy air superiority over its major cities and strategic infrastructure, forcing any attacker to pay a higher price for penetrating Iranian airspace, according to descriptions in defense reporting. This represents the conceptual framework Iran has pursued over the past decade. Over the past decade, the Iranian military has reportedly built a multi-layered system that combines different range capabilities, according to various assessments from defense analysts. The intent, according to this framework, is to create overlapping coverage that complicates attack planning and forces adversaries to dedicate more resources to any air campaign. Iranian state media describes this layered approach as providing comprehensive protection for the country's territory. However, the actual effectiveness of layered defenses depends on factors including equipment quality, operator training, system integration, maintenance, and the sophistication of attacking forces, all of which are difficult to assess accurately from public information. Analysts note that Iran's defensive approach realistically aims to raise costs rather than guarantee complete denial of airspace to a determined adversary. The distinction between complicating an attack and actually preventing it is significant for understanding how these systems might perform against advanced American capabilities in any actual conflict scenario. Some outlets have speculated about Iran seeking S-400 capabilities, but there is no reliable public confirmation of operational S-400 deployments in Iran. The S-400 is Russia's most advanced exported air defense system, and reports about potential Iranian interest should be treated as unverified speculation rather than established fact. The S-400 Triumph is a Russian-made long-range air defense system that has been exported to several countries, including Turkey, India, and China. Its capabilities against various targets are assessed differently by different sources, and real-world performance depends heavily on integration, operator training, and the specific threat environment it faces. Russian officials have confirmed defense cooperation with Iran in general terms, but specific claims about S-400 delivery or deployment have not been substantiated by independent sources or confirmed by official statements from either Moscow or Tehran. Such claims should be treated with appropriate skepticism pending verification. It is important to note that even if Iran were to acquire advanced air defense systems like the S-400, no system provides absolute protection against a determined adversary. Sophisticated adversaries like the United States develop tactics, techniques, and technologies specifically designed to counter known defensive capabilities and exploit their limitations. Russia completed delivery of S-300 air defense systems to Iran in 2016, according to reporting at the time. This delivery is one of the few confirmed elements of Iran's air defense network that can be verified from public sources and represents a genuine enhancement of Iranian capabilities. The S-300 PMU-2 provides medium to long-range air defense capability and was considered a significant acquisition for Iran when delivered. However, the system represents older technology at this point, and its effectiveness against modern threats, including stealth aircraft and advanced cruise missiles, is assessed as limited by some Western analysts. Iranian officials have described the S-300 as fully operational and integrated into their defensive network. The actual readiness and current capability of these systems cannot be independently verified from public sources, and maintenance and spare parts availability may affect operational status. Defense analysts note that maintaining sophisticated air defense systems requires ongoing support, spare parts, technical expertise, and continuous training. How well Iran has maintained its S-300 network over time, and whether it remains at full operational capability, is not publicly known with any certainty. Bavar 373 is described by Iranian state media as an indigenous long-range air defense system developed domestically to reduce dependence on foreign suppliers. Road mobile launchers reportedly provide coverage against aircraft, drones, and some classes of ballistic missiles out to roughly 200 kilometers, according to Iranian state media claims about the system's capabilities. Sayad-4 interceptor missiles associated with the Bavar 373 are described by Iranian sources as capable of engaging fifth-generation fighters at high altitude, according to state media coverage. This claim has not been independently verified by Western analysts and is viewed with significant skepticism given the technical challenges involved. Iran has promoted the Bavar 373 as evidence of domestic defense industrial capability and technological self-sufficiency. The system has been displayed at military parades and featured prominently in state media coverage. However, its actual performance characteristics against modern threats remain uncertain and untested in combat. Western analysts express skepticism about Iranian claims regarding indigenous systems' ability to counter advanced stealth aircraft. The claim that any system can reliably detect, track, and engage fifth-generation fighters like the F-35 is particularly disputed given the specific design features of such aircraft intended to defeat radar detection. Khordad-15 batteries reportedly protect major cities and air bases against jets, unmanned systems, and low-flying cruise missiles, according to Iranian state media descriptions of the system's role. The system represents Iran's medium-range defensive layer intended to fill gaps between long-range strategic defense and point defense systems. Iranian officials have described Khordad-15 as capable of detecting and engaging stealthy targets, including cruise missiles and advanced drones. This claim is significant given that cruise missiles and some unmanned aerial vehicles have reduced radar signatures. However, the actual detection and engagement capabilities against such targets have not been demonstrated publicly or verified independently. The system was reportedly used or activated during previous incidents, though details and outcomes of any actual engagements remain disputed, unclear, or unverifiable from public sources. State media claims about performance in specific incidents should be treated as Iranian government messaging rather than verified facts about system effectiveness. Medium-range systems like Khordad-15 are intended to fill the gap between long-range strategic defense and point defense of specific facilities. How effectively this layer functions in Iran's overall network and how well it integrates with other systems cannot be determined from publicly available information. 9-day launchers reportedly form inner rings around key bases and facilities, tasked with destroying low-flying drones and incoming cruise missiles that penetrate outer defensive layers, according to defense reporting on Iranian capabilities. These short-range systems provide point defense for critical infrastructure as a last line of defense. Majid short-range air defense vehicles reportedly provide last-ditch protection for critical radars and long-range missile sites, according to Iranian state media descriptions. The layered approach places multiple defensive systems around high-value targets to create redundant protection against threats that penetrate outer layers. Anti-aircraft guns and man-portable air defense systems create what is described as dense, short-range fire zones around vital infrastructure and military hubs. According to defense assessments of Iranian defensive posture, these systems represent the final layer of defense against penetrating threats and rely on volume of fire. Short-range air defense is generally considered more reliable than long-range systems because targets are closer and engagement geometry is simpler. However, if threats successfully penetrate outer defensive layers, short-range systems face challenging engagement timelines with limited reaction time available. Iran claims it uses VHF and over-the-horizon radars to improve early warning and detection of incoming threats, but specific systems and performance claims are hard to verify publicly. Iranian state media describes nationwide radar coverage intended to provide comprehensive early warning and tracking of potential threats. Some reporting describes Gadir as an over-the-horizon radar with detection ranges around 1,000 plus kilometers. But real performance depends on atmospheric conditions, target characteristics, and other factors that are not fully verifiable from public sources. Such detection ranges represent Iranian claims rather than independently verified capabilities. Passive systems are described as tracking targets silently by listening for their electronic emissions, helping maintain situational awareness without revealing their own positions through active radar transmissions, according to descriptions of Iranian capabilities. Such systems can provide supplementary tracking without active radar signatures that could be targeted. A nationwide joint air defense command reportedly links Iran's major radar stations and surface-to-air missile units into an integrated command structure, according to state media. Iranian officials claim this network provides continuous 24/7 surveillance of the country's airspace and enables rapid response to threats. The effectiveness of any air defense network depends not just on individual systems, but on how well they are integrated into a cohesive defensive structure. Iranian officials claim comprehensive integration, but this claim cannot be verified independently from public sources. Command and control linkages between radar sites and missile batteries determine how quickly threats can be detected, tracked, identified, and engaged. Gaps in integration can create vulnerabilities and delays, even if individual systems are technically capable of engaging threats. Western analysts note that integrating systems from different sources, Russian imports like the S-300 and indigenously developed systems like the Bavar 373, presents significant technical challenges. Whether Iran has achieved seamless integration across different platforms is unknown and difficult to assess. Electronic warfare considerations also significantly affect integration. An attacker would likely target command links and attempt to degrade network coordination in the opening phases of any strike. How resilient Iranian networks are to such electronic attacks and jamming is not publicly known. U.S. stealth platforms such as the B-2 and F-35 are designed to penetrate dense air defenses by minimizing their radar signature through specialized shaping and materials, according to defense reporting on American capabilities. The B-21 is still in testing and not yet operational, so it would not be available for current operations. These aircraft represent the leading edge of American air power capabilities. American electronic warfare assets would also seek to blind or confuse Iranian radars and sever command links in the opening hours of any large strike package, according to defense analysts familiar with American doctrine. Degrading air defenses before and during strikes is a standard and well-practiced component of American air campaign doctrine developed over decades. The combination of stealth aircraft, electronic warfare platforms, and precision-guided munitions represents capabilities specifically developed and refined to overcome layered air defenses like those Iran has constructed. How effectively Iran's network could respond to such threats is actively debated among defense analysts. Analysts note that while Iran's defenses might detect some threats under certain conditions, the more important question is whether detection translates to successful engagement and destruction. Tracking and engaging stealth aircraft presents significantly different and more difficult challenges than simply detecting them. Many Western analysts argue Iran's defenses could raise the cost and complexity of any air campaign, but they disagree on how much, and none can verify actual performance without combat data. Iran's defenses are generally seen as capable of complicating attack planning and potentially inflicting some losses, but specific assessments vary considerably. The view among many Western analysts is that Iran's network would be unlikely to fully prevent a determined U.S. offensive from achieving its initial objectives. However, this assessment is based on analysis, modeling, and historical precedent rather than verified performance data from actual combat involving Iranian systems. The distinction is important for understanding the stakes. Raising costs means an attacker must commit more resources, accept more risk, or adjust tactics to achieve objectives. Prevention would mean actually stopping an offensive from succeeding, a much higher bar that most analysts doubt Iran can meet against US capabilities. Iranian officials dispute Western assessments, claiming their defenses are adequate to deter or defeat any attack. This represents Tehran's deterrence messaging, which serves important purposes regardless of the underlying capability reality. Iran's air defense network may serve deterrence purposes even if its actual defensive capability against a determined US attack is limited. By demonstrating some defensive capability and projecting uncertainty about outcomes, Iran aims to raise the perceived costs of any attack. Deterrence succeeds if potential attackers decide the costs and risks outweigh the benefits, regardless of whether defenses would actually succeed in repelling an attack. Iran's publicized systems and claimed capabilities contribute to this deterrence calculation in Washington and other capitals. The uncertainty itself may serve Iranian strategic interests. If attackers cannot be certain that defenses will fail, they must plan for more robust and resource-intensive operations, commit more forces, accept greater risk, and potentially face domestic and international criticism if operations prove costly. However, deterrence fails if an adversary decides to act despite perceived costs. In that scenario, actual defensive capability, rather than perceived or claimed capability, determines battlefield outcomes and the ultimate success or failure of any defensive effort. Iranian state media regularly describes various military capabilities in terms that serve deterrence messaging and domestic political purposes. These descriptions represent Tehran's preferred narrative, rather than independently verified assessments of actual capability. Claims that indigenous systems can engage fifth-generation fighters, provide comprehensive coverage, or defeat any attack should be understood as messaging rather than established fact. Such claims serve both domestic audiences seeking reassurance and international audiences Tehran hopes to deter. International defense analysts assess Iranian claims with appropriate skepticism, noting significant gaps between promotional descriptions and observed or estimated capabilities. However, exact capabilities remain genuinely uncertain given limited independent observation and the absence of recent combat testing. For observers tracking the situation, the appropriate approach is recognizing that Iranian capabilities likely lie somewhere between Tehran's maximalist claims and the most dismissive Western assessments. Uncertainty favors caution in drawing firm conclusions in either direction. Analysts say a typical air campaign against a country with layered air defenses would prioritize air defenses, radar sites, and command links first. But that is a general template based on doctrine, not confirmed US planning for any specific Iran contingency. Suppression of enemy air defenses is standard doctrine for enabling follow-on operations. Air defense systems themselves would likely be priority targets in any sustained campaign, according to general military doctrine practiced by the United States. Destroying or degrading defensive capabilities in initial phases creates conditions for subsequent operations with reduced risk. Command and control facilities, radar sites, and communication nodes would also likely face targeting, according to analyst assessments of standard approaches. Degrading network integration reduces overall defensive effectiveness and makes subsequent strikes easier to execute. This pattern, attacking defenses to enable follow-on strikes, represents standard air campaign doctrine developed and refined over decades of US military operations. Specific US planning for any Iran contingency is not publicly known and may differ from general doctrinal templates. Iran's strategic posture does not rely solely on air defense to deter or respond to attack. Tehran has consistently emphasized that any attack would trigger responses extending beyond defensive measures, according to Iranian official statements over many years. Ballistic and cruise missile capabilities provide Iran with offensive response options that do not depend on successfully defending its own airspace. Iranian officials have repeatedly warned of strikes against regional targets in response to any attack on Iranian territory. Asymmetric capabilities, including regional relationships with various groups, naval forces in the Persian Gulf, and other unconventional tools, provide additional response options. Iran's deterrence, therefore, rests on threatened retaliation as much as or more than active air defense. Khamenei's recent warning about regional war reflects this broader strategic framework. Iran's defense concept includes imposing costs on adversaries through retaliation, not just through air defense, meaning even successful airstrikes could trigger wider conflict. Any conflict involving U.S. strikes on Iran would occur in a complex regional context, with significant implications beyond the immediate parties. American forces operate from bases throughout the Gulf region, and these facilities could face Iranian retaliation in response to strikes. Gulf states hosting U.S. forces face difficult calculations about the risks of involvement in any conflict. Iranian missile capabilities reportedly put regional bases within range, according to defense assessments, creating vulnerabilities that affect host nation calculations. The regional dimension adds considerable complexity to both American planning and Iranian deterrence calculations. Escalation could affect multiple countries beyond the primary parties and potentially draw in additional actors with their own interests. Energy infrastructure, critical shipping lanes, and broader regional stability all factor into assessments of potential conflict costs. The economic and political costs of any exchange extend well beyond direct military effects on the immediate combatants. Significant uncertainties affect both sides' calculations and limit confidence in predictions. The U.S. cannot know exactly how Iranian defenses will perform until they are actually tested in combat. Iran cannot know exactly how effective its systems are against advanced American capabilities without that same test. This mutual uncertainty fundamentally affects decision-making on both sides. Neither side can be fully confident in predictions about how any conflict would unfold, particularly in its early and most critical phases when outcomes remain most uncertain. Historical experience from past conflicts suggests that air defense performance often differs significantly from peacetime expectations and test results. Systems may perform better or worse than anticipated when facing actual combat conditions, fog of war, and adaptive adversaries. The fog of war applies to both offense and defense. Ultimate outcomes depend on factors, including equipment reliability, operator performance under stress, tactical decisions, and chance that cannot be fully predicted regardless of peacetime analysis. Military positioning occurs alongside continued diplomatic activity during the current crisis. Turkey has offered to mediate between the U.S. and Iran, and various regional powers have urged restraint from both sides. Both sides' military postures serve messaging and signaling purposes in addition to operational functions. Demonstrating capability and resolve affects ongoing negotiations and perceptions, as well as preparation for potential conflict. The relationship between military positioning and diplomatic outcomes is complex and difficult to predict. Military pressure may facilitate diplomacy by demonstrating seriousness, or it may complicate diplomacy by hardening positions and reducing flexibility. For observers, the current situation involves both military and diplomatic tracks proceeding simultaneously without clear indication of which will prove determinative. Which track ultimately shapes outcomes depends on decisions yet to be made in multiple capitals. Iran's air defense capabilities remain genuinely uncertain despite extensive analysis and reporting. Iranian claims represent messaging that may overstate capabilities. Western assessments are based on analysis and modeling, not verified combat data against Iranian systems. What is clear is that any conflict would involve significant costs and risks for all parties involved. Even if U.S. forces could achieve air superiority as most analysts expect, the broader consequences, including Iranian retaliation, regional escalation, and economic disruption, would be substantial and difficult to predict. The military balance matters, but it does not determine political outcomes by itself. Political decisions about whether to act and how to respond to action ultimately shape how any crisis develops and resolves. For observers tracking the situation, the key uncertainties include How effective are Iranian defenses actually? Would the US commit to sustained operations? How would Iran respond? What would regional escalation look like? These questions remain open as the crisis continues to develop.